All right, and we are live. We'll wait a few moments to let people trickle in, but welcome.
Didn't take long. Here they come.
Yep.
Hello. Hello, those who are joining.
Welcome, welcome.
Welcome indeed.
Hello.
We've got we're expecting a pretty hearty turnout this afternoon, so we're very excited to be doing this, hanging with everybody,
Nice.
teaching you all some valuable TouchMix and mixing knowledge. Well, we hope it's valuable anyway.
All right, the numbers are still climbing, but they're slowing down a bit. So I'll go ahead and introduce myself. My name is Jacob. I am the training coordinator at QSC, and I'll be helping moderate the webinar as we go along. Jason is going to be heading up the training. He's going to be talking to you guys about all the fascinating TouchMix information.
All of it.
Nice to meet you, honey.
And then we have Golden, who is in the car right now. She's chatting, saying hi to some friends.
Golden's joining us. She's our mobile panelist this morning.
Yeah.
Yes,
afternoon. I don't know
I
what
just
time
got
it is.
off a plane and my dad's driving me home and I'm in the car and he's introducing me to all his friends here in Hickstown, Missouri.
Naturally.
Actually, called Higginsville, Missouri.
Well, thank you very much for joining us and being available for us here today.
We also have Stu. He's going to be helping us out as well.
Gone. Glad y'all could make it.
Just a few things before we do get started, though. We are allowing you guys to ask questions, obviously. We want you guys to be involved. We want you guys to ask questions. If you have any, go ahead and throw them in the Q&A. We're not going to have the chat open. We're just going to have everything go through the Q&A, and we'll try to answer as many questions as we can. If we don't answer your question, don't worry. It'll be cataloged, and we'll be able to email you individually if it does come to that. And if you do have a microphone and your question involves a little bit more back and forth conversation, go ahead and I will unmute you, and you can chat with Jason and the rest of our panelists to get all the answers you guys need. So with that, Jason, you have anything else?
No, it looks like we do have someone raising their hand already, though.
Might just be saying hi, Dennis. I can allow you to chat if you want to say hi or you have a question. You are.
Go ahead, Dennis, if you have a question.
Just wanted to say hi, and I don't have my mixer near me because my laptop by my mixer is misbehaving with mail, so I'm just at my desktop watching and listening and maybe taking some notes.
Very good. Well,
Nice.
that's perfectly fine. Hopefully you'll still be able to follow along and definitely take some notes. Very good. Thanks, Dennis. Happy to have you this morning, this afternoon. I don't know what time it is.
Well, it depends
could be
where
morning.
Dennis is from.
It depends on where you are. Good morning, good afternoon, good night. Very good. Okay. Well, then we'll go ahead and get started here. A couple of things, actually, I think I do have to say. If you do have your mixer with you, that is great. Feel free to follow along with me here. Most of the webinar today will be looking at a live camera view of my TouchMix, and I'll be showing you how to kind of get around and follow along with the topic. Additionally, we did provide you guys with some work files, some audio tracks, and a couple of scenes. So those are essentially the tracks that I have that I will be working with today. So if you wanted to, cue those up in your mixer and follow along with what I'm doing kind of as I do it, you have that ability. If not, that is perfectly fine. If you didn't get the tracks, or if, like Dennis, if you don't have your mixer near you, that is 100% okay. It is not mandatory for you to be participating in this. It just is a way we offer you to possibly enhance your learning experience. Additionally, the audio from my mixer itself, if you don't have your mixer and if you're not listening to your own tracks, you will be able to listen to that. However, we're going to be streaming that separately. So the audio from my presentation mixer will not be coming through the Zoom call here. There'll be a separate link that you guys can grab so that you can stream that separately, and it maintains its high fidelity that way. And Jacob has the link for that. He'll drop that in the chat for you guys right now.
Just
So
threw it in there. So
perfect.
we
So
should have it in the chat panel. Yeah. Or wait, no, I lied. I only
oh,
sent it to you guys, so that's useless.
come on.
Let me try again.
Can't believe this.
So,
And now everyone should have it. There you go.
Excellent. All right. So there's the link. Go ahead and get that, and that'll just open up in a separate web browser. It's called Audio Movers. And you can just hit the, the listen now or activate, I forget what it's called, but you'll be prompted to hit a button and listen to my stream. And so anytime I'm using my mixer and playing audio through my mixer, it'll come through that. So you'll be able to hear it in high fidelity. You'll also be able to have kind of a separate level control for that audio. So you'll have, my mixer audio through that, and then my voice coming through the call here, and you can adjust your levels appropriately to however you're listening to that stuff.
so Jason,
Okay.
the guy from Beyond Entertainment, says, pace yourself so he can keep up.
Pace myself. Okay, I'm a
Yeah.
little excited. I do get excited when I do these things. I'll try to calm down. Give myself a glass of water here. Okay, let's go ahead and jump into the topic. So today, we've got a pretty good lesson for you. This lesson, we're going to be talking about gain structure and the importance of dialing in your preamp settings optimally to allow your mixer to perform to the best of its ability. And then after we have that discussion, we're going to take a deep look at the presets on the mixer, and we're going to use them to actually build a mix. And you'll be able to see just how quickly and easily you can build an entire mix that not only sounds really good, but is also stable. It's a stable mix, and it really helps to cut down on feedback and things like that. So we're kind of going to establish a little bit of a workflow here, starting with gain structure. We're going to set up our preamps on the mixer, take a look at what that looks like, and then continue to build our mix using our preamps, and we'll have a listen to what all that sounds like throughout this session here. In the first part of our topic here, adjusting the gain structure of your PA correctly is beneficial because it, for one, can dramatically improve the performance of your overall system. It can also simplify the overall operation, and it's going to help avoid damage to your loudspeaker components in the long run if this is done correctly. And very simply, a gain stage is a point in a device where gain is applied and or controlled. So what I'm going to do here, I have a fun little PowerPoint presentation that I put together. I'm going to start off with this, and then we'll dive into my mixer view here. But just to kind of help explain gain structure, let me switch my view. There we go. So you guys should be seeing my PowerPoint. I'm going to use a series of crudely constructed graphics and diagrams to help explain science, kind of. So let's just take an example here. What I've tried to draw here is a very simple example of a sound system. So we have our instruments, which would be guitars, drums, or our vocals, or our talkers, if it's a speech application, things like that. So whatever our audio sources are, and we're going to feed those into a mixer, and the mixer is going to mix these signals, and it will output that mix of all those components to your amplifiers or your loudspeakers so that you can hear all of those components mixed together. And there we go. So here's our definition of gain structure. Gain structure is the art of properly setting the gain of all of your gain stages relative to each other in order to keep your mix free of noise and distortion. There you go. Make sense? Very simple. What does that mean? Okay. I'm going to back up a little bit here and go over a couple of key terms. So in order to really understand what gain structure is and then ultimately how to achieve a proper gain stage setup, we need to have a further understanding of a couple key terms here that are related to this. So the first one is gain. Simple enough. And gain is very simply a change in signal level between any input and any output. So at any point in your signal, if you're adding gain or taking away gain, signal level, that is what gain is referring to, that change. A gain stage is a point in any device where gain is applied or controlled, okay? So that is, your actual control where you're controlling the level of your gain at any point throughout your entire system. And there are many of these, which we'll see in a minute. Next, we have a mixer. Yeah, so to illustrate gain stages themselves, a mixer can be a gain stage, or an amplifier can be a gain stage, right? Because when the signal goes into an amplifier, we have the ability to add and subtract gain at the point of that amplifier. Or a loudspeaker, a powered loudspeaker, primarily because a powered loudspeaker is going to have the amplifier built into it. So it's the same principle as just having an amplifier. Additionally, other components such as EQ, compressors, gates, and effects are all considered gain stages because all of these things have the ability to adjust the gain of whatever signal that it is receiving. And now there are hardware versions of all of these things. And maybe you have a rack with a couple of effects and some EQ and compression all dialed in there. Many mixers, however, many modern mixers have all of these things within it. So your mixer itself probably has multiple gain stages. And each of these things, any of these components themselves can have multiple gain stages throughout them. Just looking at the mixer, which is what we're going to be looking at in the lesson today, you have your preamps. That's your first gain stage, and that's pretty much your first gain stage of your system. That's where your signal comes from your components, from your audio sources, and it enters into your mixer through your preamp. So that is your first gain stage. Then, after it passes through your initial preamps, you have your input faders and your output faders. Those are both gain stages as well. And then in between your inputs and your outputs, you're probably also going to have some EQ, maybe a compressor, gates, and maybe you're running effects. All that stuff is usually built into your mixer these days, especially digital mixers, and it certainly is built into TouchMix, which is what we're going to be looking at. So all of those things are different gain stages, and all of those things are important to be aware of and important to kind of configure appropriately in relationship to each other. So there you go. So now, with that in mind, I'll reiterate. So gain structure is the art of properly setting the gain level of all gain stages in a sound system relative to each other. And the goal of that is to keep the mix free of noise and distortion, which leads us into our next part of this conversation. So that is the overall definition of gain structure. There again, we're happy. So now how do we achieve that? What does it look like to get a input or get a gain stage to its optimal level? So here's another crudely constructed diagram that I'll show you. Hopefully you can follow what we're looking at here. So the green and yellow and red kind of spikes that look like a mountain range is a audio signal. And what you're looking at here is as an audio signal passing into an input. On either end here, we have clip and noise floor. And so those are the two things that those are two obstacles, and those are two things that we're going to want to use to find our optimal level here. In between our noise floor and our clip is the dynamic range. So up at the top, clipping is essentially signal distortion. It is caused by overdriving the input. So when your incoming signal is too strong and the electronics of that input are overdriven, it can't handle the full signal that it is receiving, and so you get clipping. And it's called clipping because at that instance, the physical waveform of that audio signal is literally clipped off at its peaks. So you're getting that clipping effect, and it causes audible distortion, which can lead to physical damage of your components over time. So it not only does it sound bad, it's also harmful. So we want to avoid clipping at all costs. And at the other end of the spectrum here is the noise floor, which is just a baseline level of noise that it is inherent in any electronic device, any electronic audio device. You've probably heard, the noise floor as soon as you turn on, your PA, as soon as you turn on maybe your home receiver, you kind of hear, that your system is on because you hear that kind of baseline level of noise. That's the noise floor. And we'll talk a little bit more about the noise floor. It is sort of fixed, not sort of, it is a fixed level for every component. So you can't really adjust the level of the noise floor. The idea is to get your signal up above the noise floor so that you don't hear the noise floor. It sort of drowns it out. And that is called the signal to noise ratio. It is the ratio of desirable signal to undesirable noise, right? So what we want to listen to is the signal that we're giving that input. We don't want to hear the noise. Most components, if they're quality components, it's relatively easy to achieve a good signal to noise ratio, where you have a healthy signal and you're drowning out a lot of the noise. You're not really hearing it anymore. That's the idea. So keeping all those things in mind, what we're looking for, what the goal here is to reach what we're going to call the nominal operating level. And this is simply the maximum level at which the gain stage performs optimally. I like to call it the sweet spot. And you can see that in the diagram here. That is represented by that yellow area. So that dotted line that's kind of bisecting the input, the graph there, is what I'm going to call unity. And we'll talk about unity as well kind of as we go on. But unity is the point in any gain stage where the signal is not being affected at all. So that stage is not applying gain or taking away gain. So there's no change in the incoming signal at all. That's sort of our nominal, our average level, we'll call it. And so at that point where we're not affecting the signal at all, we want to have our signal peaking just above that point. So we're on the graph here where it's kind of turning yellow. We don't want it to quite hit that clipping point. And we want it to be well over our noise floor, so we're not just hearing static noise. We want to hear that signal nice and healthy, but we don't want to clip it. That is what we're looking for here. And then the last term that I threw on here is headroom. It's a good thing to have an understanding of. Headroom is the difference between the nominal operating level, so right, that's the level where we want it, and then the level of clipping. So the room that you have in between your sweet spot and the point of your clipping, we're going to call that, the rest of that room, headroom. Okay, there we go. So that's it. So that should hopefully give you at least a rudimentary idea of what these terms mean, what clipping means, what the noise floor is, and how we use these things to find our nominal operating levels. Now let's go ahead and take a look at what that looks like on an actual signal. And I will, at this point, punch over to my TouchMix view. Cool. All right, so you should be able to see my mixer now. This is my mix screen. I've got my fader view here, and we're going to start at this point. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just simply going to use a microphone. I've got a microphone connected into an input here, and I'm going to go ahead, and if you're listening to the feed, you'll hear my voice twice for a little while here while I run through this part. I'm going to actually back my view out slightly. I want to show you the preamps. There we go. So right up here are my trim knobs. So these adjust the level of all the preamps on TouchMix. So this is stage one. Your first gain stage is this control here. So this is adjusting the level of our preamp. We're adjusting the gain of the preamp. And this stage is probably the most important one to get set optimally, because from this point, this feeds the signal throughout the rest of your gain stages within your mixer and then out, to your B chain, to your loudspeakers or whatever you have connected to your outputs here. So we want this to be dialed in and set optimally, because that's going to give us a nice healthy signal to work on throughout the rest of the gain stages and throughout the rest of our mix. So what we're going to want to do here, now you see my trim knob here, I'm going to punch back in so you can actually see the level increasing, but just to show you here, I'm going to just be dialing this knob up like that as we go until we start to see signal on our channel. So pardon me, my super high-tech setup here. Okay, so as I dial this up, I'm going to talk into this. You'll start to be able to see the signal increase. It would help if I took the channel off of track. Here we go. Okay, so there we go. I've got signal into my channel. You should be able to see that meter on my channel right there. At this point, I do have it dialed all the way up. This is an SM58, so it doesn't have the strongest input signal. So I can actually get this all the way up, and I'm actually realistically almost at my optimal setting already. But just to demonstrate this, I'm going to go ahead and clip this microphone intentionally, because that's what you want to do. You want to dial up that preamp until you achieve the point of clipping. So if I were just to go, hey, there we go. Did you see it? So you'll know you clipped, because the meter itself will very briefly turn red in the instance of clipping. But more so, what's going to happen is your mini fader representations in your navigation strip up at the top, the fader that is representing that particular channel is going to turn red. That is your clip indicator. That is how you know that you've clipped a channel, and that will latch. So the clip itself is fleeting. It's an instant, or several instances. Hopefully, it's just instantaneous. If you're flat out flooring a preamp, that you got a big problem and you need to fix that quickly. But a dynamic audio signal will clip momentarily. Hey, check. There you go. You can kind of see it clipping there. Once we find that point, we're going to want to just start dialing it back. So at the same incoming signal level, we're no longer seeing clipping on our peaks, on our highest points of our meter there, and we are just sitting well into the yellow. So if you can see that as I talk into this microphone, you can see as I kind of talk a little bit louder and a little bit more forcefully, you can see the peaks there. Yep, just hitting right into the yellow, just above the unity mark there, which is represented by that 0. There you go. So that could be our optimal signal level that we know that we found that sweet spot. We're into the yellow here, which is what it's going to look like on this particular meter. We're hitting above unity, we're into the yellow, but we're not clipping. At the strongest points of the signal, we're not hitting clip, and that's it. That's what you want. However, I'm going to increase my headroom a little bit, and this is a good idea to do, just to allow for sudden peak transients that might happen down the line. So at this point, we'll consider this a sound check. During sound check, we have whatever level we're sound checking at. We can find that level, okay? It is very common for, the incoming signal to change slightly, once an event happens or once your concert begins or whatever is happening. So to anticipate this, it's a good idea to just give yourself anywhere from 6 to 12 dB of additional headroom. So we're going to we're going to take this dial down a little bit more, and the way you know how much gain you're adjusting in dB is by following the tick marks around your trim knob here. If you're looking at the mixer, they'll be very clear. Whoops, be very clear that you have tick marks. I'm going to punch out one more time, just to show you guys this a little bit. I want to accommodate everybody here. So hopefully you can see that. You can see around the trim knobs here, there are tick marks as you kind of turn the dial around. Each one of those tick marks represents 3 dB of change. So if you're increasing the preamp, or increasing your trim knob, each tick mark that you pass represents a 3 dB increase in gain. And if you're taking it down, as you pass each tick mark, that's 3 dB that you're taking out of that preamp. So I'm going to give myself 6 dB on this channel, and I'm going to do that by going down 2 tick marks. So 1, 2. Now I've pulled 6 dB out of this preamp, and that's about where I'm sitting. That's still a really nice level. We're still got the peaks hitting very well into the yellow there. So that's still a really nice strong signal, and we do have a little bit of additional headroom. So that's it. So we just found our optimal level on this signal, and you would repeat the process for the rest of your channels. That's all you do. That's how you find the optimal level on your preamps. It's pretty simple, but having a good idea of what to look for on the meter and how to adjust it out accordingly is really just going to give you a huge advantage from this point forward when you're working with your mix. There is another tool that I want to show off at this point called the Gain Wizard, which can do 2 things. It can help you do what I just showed you, although what I just showed you didn't really take a lot of time, and it's fairly easy to do if you kind of understand what you're doing, what you're looking at. But if we punch into the Gain Wizard, I'll show you another way that you can do that. This is actually a very powerful tool that you have at your disposal, not only for setting this initial preamp level, but for maintaining the optimal level throughout your event or throughout your performance, which is very key. As I kind of said, it is very common for your preamp, your incoming signals to vary throughout an event. You have a couple of other factors and other variables that can kind of happen once your event starts. Maybe it's a band, and the band is super excited that they have a packed house, and so they start playing harder, they start singing harder. The drummer, is just every single snare hit as a rim shot, and he wasn't playing like that during sound check. Maybe the guitar player walks back and just dimes his amplifier when he had it set, somewhere that would be acceptable during the sound check. These kind of things happen. Maybe it's a corporate thing, and maybe there's someone that's giving a speech and they get nervous, and so they start talk a little louder. At any given point, once you've set up your preamp initially, you still have the potential to clip that channel at some point during your event. If you do clip that channel, you will see it in your clip indicators here, and at any point you can come into your Gain Wizard, and we'll take a look at that now. So to access your Gain Wizard, you're going to press the Wizards button, which will be located right above your button cluster here. That one right there. If you're looking at your TouchMix, you should be pretty easy to find that. If you're not, here's my wheel here, and there it is, right in this cluster right up there. So we're going to press that button, and we get to our Wizards menu, and I'm going to select the Gain Wizard. There we go, and it looks like I've clipped a lot of my channels previously before I got online with you guys. But what this is, it is showing us clip indication for all of our preamps. So this is additional clip indicators, but they are dynamic clip indicators. And what I mean by that is they don't just show us that we've clipped, they actually show us the intensity of the clipping. And they do that in these different LEDs. So each indicator has 4 LEDs that it uses to represent 3 dB of clip each. So each LED is 3 dB of clip, okay? And that's important to know that because we can correlate that with the tick marks around the trim knobs. And I will say at this point, depending on what mixer you're using, if you're using an 8 or a TouchMix 30 like I'm using here, the trim knobs on those have what are called linear potentiometers. So all of those tick marks are going to be evenly spaced as you go around. The TouchMix 16 has a little bit different potentiometers. Those are called exponential taper. And you'll notice if you're looking at a TouchMix 16 that the space in between those tick marks is not even as you go around. It is much larger at lower levels, and then as you increase the level, they get closer and closer and closer and closer together. Now, each tick mark is still representing 3 dB of change. It's just as you go up, that 3 dB takes less and less change on the actual physical dial, and so that's a good thing to be paying attention to. So there is a slight differential there between the preamps. Nonetheless, you can follow this wizard just the same. So once you've reached the point of clipping, you can see I've clipped here. I'm going to reset all of these, and we're going to actually run my microphone sound check one more time. I'm going to get this guy to clip, and we'll be able to see it here. Check, check. Hey, hey, hey. I'm going to go ahead and just beat it. There we go. Okay, so now I've got our maximum level of clip in our gain that our gain wizard can show us, which is 12 dB of clip. So it's 4 instances of 3 dB, so 12 dB of total clip here. So I've got a big problem. I don't want to be clipping that heavily. In this instance, what I would do is I would take my trim knob and I would take it down 4 tick marks. I've got 4 LEDs showing on the screen. I take it down 4 tick marks. It's very simple. And then I reset it and I do the same thing. Check, 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 check. Okay. I can still clip it pretty heartily. Okay, great. So now doing the same thing with the same level of input, now I'm only seeing 2 instances of clip. So I can give this an additional 2 notches back. I can reset it and I can, come on. Hey, 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 hey. Now, I apologize for all my mic checking into this. But now, there we go. I've got my signal level and we're not seeing any clip indication. We're good. If we did want to, we could wait for it and kind of get it up a little bit so we get 1 level of clip. Hey, 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 check, check, do it. Anyway, if you're getting 1 bar, 1 LED on there, that's not so much of a problem depending on what it is. If it's a vocal channel, that's probably fine. If it's something that's less dynamic, maybe like a bass guitar or a drum of some sort, you probably want to get that so that you're not seeing any indications at all. But there you go. And if I were to show you my trim knob here, it's in the exact same position that I had it at when I manually set that level. So the gain wizard just kind of allowed me to have an additional visual aid to set that up. Additionally, like I said, it's always working. So anytime you clip at all, at any point, you're going to get your clip indicator up here. Let's say, your show's going on and your drummer just thinks he's Thor and now he's just whacking that snare drum and you look up here and, oh, my snare drum channel has clipped. Great, I got to adjust that level. You can come into your wizard and you can see how intense it clipped. And then okay, I'm going to dial that channel back 3 tick marks and then reset it, kind of let him play for another few seconds and see if you get any more indications. If you're good, you're good. And so you can very accurately and confidently maintain your optimal preamp level throughout your performance using the gain wizard. So this is a pretty powerful tool in allowing you to do that. Very good. So that got us through gain and kind of effectively and efficiently setting our optimum gain levels. And again, I just, as an example, used my single channel, my microphone here, but you would just kind of repeat this process for all of your channels until you got them all in that position. From there, you'd want to get some fader levels. So I'm going to go ahead and turn my output down. And at this point, I'll go ahead and mention that I've got my scene startup. So if you did get the downloaded package and you're following along with your tracks, go ahead and recall the scene that we labeled starting scene. And you can do that by either pressing that scenes button in the upper right-hand corner above the main fader, or you can press the menu button and then select scenes on the screen. And if you got it saved on a USB device and that USB device is connected to your mixer, you will see it show up in this column here. It's called starting scene. You simply hit that recall button and then confirm it. You will know that it was recalled by looking in this field here, the starting or the current scene. I should say starting scene. And the only thing that I've done in that scene is just rename all the channels. So when we play our tracks back, we know what all of our tracks are instead of just guessing what is input 1, what is input 15, I don't know. The other thing I will mention is this is a full 24 channel mix. If you are following on an 8 or 16, the tracks and the scene is still compatible, it'll still work. However, you'll just lose, however many channels, run off after the channels that you have on your mixer. So if you're using an 8, you'll kind of be working with the drum mix pretty much. If you're using a 16, you will have a few more of the instruments. It's fine. It shouldn't set you back too much. And either way, after this webinar, you have those tracks and you can kind of play with them on your own and use some of these techniques that we're going to talk about. Okay, so we've got our starting scene called up here. I've got all my tracks labeled. So if I were to start playing audio, and I'm actually running my tracks out of a DAW, so I'm in this mode, but you're going to want to be in the multi-track DAW mode if you're running your tracks. So go ahead and make sure you're in multi-track DAW, and I'll switch that real quick. Hopefully that doesn't mess me up too bad. You'll be in this mode. You'll simply, make sure all of your tracks are set to track. So you'll want to punch all those on like that. And you should be up and running. If you hit play, you'll be able to see the meters start to dance, indicating that there's audio happening there. We won't be able to hear anything yet because all of our faders are still all the way down, and that's the next step in configuring our gain, building our fader mix. I'm going to switch my mode back over here so we can hear my tracks, and we'll very quickly dial these up. Let's see if this works. If I play back audio, very good. All right, so now you can't hear anything clearly. So if you're listening to the broadcast of this mixer, all my faders are down. So at this point, we know we have levels coming in. We can see all the meters active, and we're going to just pretend that this is our band on stage, that they're playing some audio. As I increase all of these, we should be able to hear our instruments. You should hear my drum set coming online. And I'm just going to quickly select all of my faders with my left hand here, and then I'm going to use my wheel to bring up their level. That's our touch and turn technique. That's kind of the recommended workflow that we have with TouchMix here. So I'm going to just get some levels. And at this point, what you're kind of aiming for, is for all of your channels to be within negative 10 dB and unity. Somewhere within that range is ideal, is it's going to kind of give you a really healthy level within your fader mix to feed to your output. Because once this happens, once you increase these levels, and I'm going to talk over my mix a little bit here, we're now feeding all of our channels to our output, and we should be able to hear that. And so we're going to want to use our ears at this point and get ourselves, a healthy mix between all of our different channels, all of our different sources. Not everything is going to be at the same level. So we just kind of want to get everything to where we think we might want to have it, so we can hear everything. Get a little more guitar. Now our two piano channels will want the same. So now, the range of negative 10 dB to unity is not a hard rule of thumb. It's just a sort of a guideline to kind of work within. That is sort of, we can call that the optimal level of your fader. Once you've got the optimal preamp level dialed in, and we know we're healthy on that signal, now we can feed the main output with a healthy fader level. Now, depending on the instrument, you might be able to kind of creep below or above that range a little bit, particularly if you're dealing with a soloist at any given point. If you get a guitar solo or a horn solo or something like that, it's okay to maybe get them a few dB, 3 to 4 dB above unity. And the inverse of that, if you've got a particularly strong signal, or maybe you've got like a pitchy backing vocals or something like that, it's okay to bury them in the mix a little bit. You can take them maybe down a few dB below that negative 10 dB range. And you'll be able to tell kind of where you are on a given channel, whoops, by as you adjust its level, you
Jason,
can see
I'm sorry to
up
interrupt.
here. Yeah.
Hey, are you in DAW mode or USB? Because people are trying to use their USB and it looks like you're in DAW mode.
Yeah, I am in DAW mode. I did mention that.
So did
I
the
guess
file you have
I went
include the
by a little quickly.
XML?
Sorry, what?
Was the XML not included with the tracks you
Yes, so there should have been a scene that you can recall, and that should set you up in multi-track mode because you're playing your tracks off of a USB. That you downloaded those tracks, you've got them on a USB, and that's how we recommend you playing them back. Unless you have the ability to set them up in a DAW like I have. I'm using a DAW for mine because it's just a little easier. And it takes less time that I don't have to keep going back to my record screen every time I want to start and stop audio. So I am playing my tracks off of a DAW session. But for everybody else, if you're following along, you more than likely are going to be in the multi-track USB mode, where you're playing the tracks from here manually.
Okay.
So there's
the
a difference.
XML file that accompanies that, when you sent it, did it automatically go on, like unzip with the tracks?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a zip file that had it was a full recording session folder that you can just load directly onto a drive, and it had all the tracks and all of the presets already loaded into it.
Okay. Got it.
There should have been there was a little instruction sheet that kind of went with it that was in the email, the confirmation email. There's also a little, if you looked at the instruction sheet, there was a link at the bottom to a video of kind of how to extract that stuff. So hopefully you all found that easily enough and you were all able to get that working for you. If not,
follow along for now,
yeah.
So you don't miss what he's doing, and then we can go back and look at the videos and the instructions after the fact.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and if it wasn't clear, if it wasn't easy for you to accomplish, you'd let us know, and we'll definitely go back and take a look and see how we can revise that stuff and make it easier going forward for people to get this content.
And for those who did load it, remember you have to load the scene and
Yep.
then also load the session.
Which we talked about.
Yeah.
So you come into scenes, and you're going to want to get starting scene, and then to pull up the session, in your recording mode here, you go to record setup. And I don't have anything in mind because I don't have a drive connected, but you should see your scene, your starting scene show up in there, or so your starting session start up there. You select it and you hit the recall button, and then you should see the default current session change there to the name of that session, and then you can hit the record play button one more time, get yourself back out to your transport controls, and again you should see that USB session in this field here, so you know that you've got the correct track session loaded, and then up here you got the correct scene loaded, and then from that point we're going to set everything to track across your whole mix. And then at that point, you can hit your play button and you'll be able to see those tracks play. And then as you increase your fader levels, you'll be able to hear the audio on each track individually, just as I've done here. I'm just doing a little bit differently. I apologize for not making that clear earlier. But yeah, I am just running mine off of a computer DAW session. Hopefully that clears it up. Very cool. And I will quickly here reset all of my tracks, and again, if you're not following along like this, hopefully you've got the feed and you can at least kind of hear what's happening on my mixer through that. All right, so we've got a fader level kind of dialed in here. It looks like everything is pretty good within our range, and as I was saying, if you select the fader at any given point, when you select it, the name of the fader will show you the dB output. So my trumpet right here, if I select that again, is at -5. My conga is at -9. So I've got everything, with the snare's a little light, within kind of that -10 to unity range. And if they stray, if certain things kind of have to stray a little bit outside of that, that's okay. The main thing you want to avoid is clipping on your master output. So if you get any of your faders at this point too hot and you start to clip your master output, that's really bad. You're out of PA. You need a back. You can very simply just back your main fader off. That would fix it. But it's a good idea to kind of keep your fader mix pretty healthy so that you're mixing within a healthy range of unity. So we know that we're getting a nice, strong, healthy signal out to our main output. And then if we need to, we can adjust the main output itself to kind of adjust our overall output level. And then from that point, it would go out to your B chain, and then that's a separate conversation configuring the gain for that. But at this point, our mixer is dialed in. We have a mix, we have a fader mix, we've got healthy preamp levels. Now it's time to start applying processing. So we're going to want to apply EQ and maybe some compression and gating and things like that to our channels. And to do that, we simply punch into any of our channels by touching the name above its fader. I'll show you that one more time. Name above the fader enters you into the channel strip, so you can access the EQ, the compressor, the gate. You can even apply effects and can do all kinds of things from here. To get out of this, you're going to press the home button. If you want to get back out to your fader mix, that's your home button, which is sort of a little bit buried by my head there, but it's there. So there you go. So we're going to go into a channel, and then we can very easily make changes to our EQ, make changes to our compressor, or we can use presets. So the goal for the remainder of this lesson is to just kind of highlight the power of the presets. And a little background on the presets real quick before I start diving in here. So the presets they're very usable. They give you an excellent channel setup. And the reason that they're usable is because we crafted them using real musicians. We had real session guys and real players come in with real instruments, and we set them up in different sized rooms. So we had practice rooms and studio rooms and larger performance venues and stadiums and things like that. And in each room, we actually had multiple setups. So we had a small PA setup and a medium and a large setup. And it was a very painstaking and tedious process of getting them sounding good for their instrument, on one PA, moving them to another PA, making some more changes until it sounded good there, and then you go back to the other PA and see what the differences are, and make some more changes maybe, and then you kind of go up, and you go up and down throughout the different PAs until you get something that sounds good across all of them. And what we like to say here is it'll get you about 80% of the way to a complete channel setup, which is a gigantic time saver. Or if you're a novice and you don't have a lot of experience, or maybe no experience, behind a mixer or using some of these tools like an EQ or a compressor and things like that, that's going to get you up and running. It's going to give you something usable. It's going to give you a good sound, potentially, better than you might have found on your own. It's incredibly easy to use these and to utilize them. But at the very least, even if you are a tried and true professional, you've been a mix engineer for years or decades, getting that initial 80% dialed in instantly is a huge time saver. You don't have to chase down your starting EQ points and things like that. So to take advantage of the presets, you just navigate into the preset tab here like I have from within any channel, and we're going to use our menu system here. So we've got 3 banks to narrow down and select our preset. And I'm going to punch out of here real quick. I'm going to actually start this on our vocal channel. So I've got, if I go into inputs 17 through 24 on my mix, I've got my lead vocal here and our 2 female vocalists there. I'm going to go into my vocal channel, and I'll go to the presets tab here. And so our first bank in our menu is broken down by instrument or vocal type. So I'm going to select vocals and speech here. And then in my next bank over, it's called type, and I have various types that would correspond to that instrument or the vocals or whatever you're working with here. So in my case, I'm going to set this up as a vocal channel. And I have a couple of options here. I have any vocalist, which is just kind of a generic starting point, or I can specify a music application or a speech application. I'm going to select a music application because the tracks I'm using are a musical performance. However, the speech applications are something to behold. These are really awesome if you're using it for this application. They are broken down by a few different microphone types. So you have a handheld, a head mic, a lavalier, and a podium. And all of these presets work exceedingly well for these different microphone types. You're actually listening to this preset right here. I'm wearing a lav, and this is how you're hearing me. And I've actually got this exact preset dialed in on my broadcast mixer over here, and I haven't made any changes to it. It's just the straight preset, recalled it, and went with it. So those are pretty powerful. But we're going to take a look at the music options here. And so we have two options. So the last menu here is going to be the actual presets themselves. So we've narrowed it down. We've picked our instrument. We've chosen the type of instrument, and now we have our actual presets. And so I'm going to choose male vocal, and to do that, I'm going to press this recall button. However, I'm going to pay attention to these options below that button first. A couple of things, or a lot of things, happen when you recall a preset. It configures your entire channel. It gives you an EQ curve. Sometimes it gives you a compressor or a gate settings as well. And it also is going to rename the channel based on that preset. It is going to reset the fader level for that channel all the way down. And it may or may not apply phantom power to that channel depending on what the preset is and if it's expecting a condenser microphone to be connected or not. So if you've already gone through and kind of dialed a couple of these parameters in, you might not want the preset to affect those. And in my case, I have already named my channel, and I've already pulled the level up to somewhere where I know it's about where I want to have it, okay? So I don't want it to reset those things. So I'm going to go ahead and just omit the first two options here. I'm going to say omit levels and assignments. That's telling it that, okay, don't mess with my fader level. That's the levels. It's also telling it that, if I were to have this set up going to any of our channel groups or out to any of our auxiliary sends, to not change those either. I'm also going to omit name because I've named my channel and I like the name and I don't want it to be changed. Although in this case, I think the name would probably be the same as what I've named it. But in any case, if you named it something specific, you don't want that to be affected, you can omit that in the recall process. So I've picked my options there. I'm simply going to hit recall, yes, and then up in here it says it reflects the name of the preset that I've chosen. And that is how you know, A, that you've recalled the preset on the channel and what preset is recalled on the channel at any given time. The menu here is not an indication of what is actively recalled on the channel, and that's important. People have gotten confused by this. So on any channel you look at, you want to look at the field here, and that's going to tell you what preset you've got recalled. You can also look at the overview screen, and we have the same field right here in that little strip there. So here, or in the preset screen itself, that's where you can look to see what preset is recalled here. And to illustrate, I'll just punch over into the next channel. I'm going to use my next button here. You do have these navigation buttons if you're inside of a channel and you just want to kind of scrub forward or backward linearly between your channels and stay on the same screen. Watch, if I go to next, now I'm in my female vocal channel, but I'm still looking at my preset screen for that channel. So that's pretty handy. And now look, my menu looks the same, right? So I can look at this and assume that I have the same male vocal preset recalled on this channel, and I don't want that. That is not true. That is simply the last thing that was selected on the menu. What you're going to look at is here. This tells you what preset is actually recalled. Okay, so there you go. Now I've got this channel, and I'm going to isolate this channel so we can listen to it alone real quick and study this preset for a minute. And I'm going to do something kind of fun to give us the ability to isolate this. And this is something we can do on all three mixers. There is a solo in place feature on the TouchMix 30 itself that I could use to solo out any given channel. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my mute groups to set this up. And the 8 and the 16 have this ability as well. So this is a slight tangent from the lesson, but it'll be fun, I promise. Let me just make sure I got my, okay. So if you look over here, this button over here in your button cluster, this is called mute groups. I'm going to press that. Now this takes us to our mute group stage, and a mute group very simply allows you to create a group of channels that you can mute with one button. So you can mute multiple channels at once. And we're going to talk a lot more about mute groups and the other group options specifically in another webinar, so I'm not going to get too deep into how this works, but I'm going to quickly set up a couple of these. So here is my main screen. This is how I can activate any of my mute groups. Now to set them up, I'm going to press this edit button that I was hovering above. Okay, so now this is my setup screen for my mute groups. At this point, I can punch back in because we've seen the button. I have 8 mute groups. I can access any one of the 8 using the navigation tabs at the top. I'm fine using mute grunt. So what I want to do is I want to set my mute group 1 up to isolate my vocal channel. So if I can hit this button, it mutes everything except for my vocal channel. And to do that, I'm going to use the assignment buttons here, and I'm going to select every single channel except my vocal channel, right? Okay, it should look like that if you're following me here. Select everything, save for the one that you want to isolate, okay? And this is just one application I'm using this for. There are many other applications for a mute group, and we'll talk about that in the corresponding webinar. But for now, I've got them assigned, and I'm going to give it a name. I'm going to say male Vox solo. There we go. I'm going to set up a second one. I want to do the same thing with the kick drum. I'll name this one first. I'll name it kick, and then I'll highlight everything except for the kick channel. Whoop. And I got them all. Okay, so my kick is isolated, and now I want to just isolate my entire drum set. We'll have the ability to just listen to the drums by themselves. And I'll name this drums. That's fine. Okay, now if I go to my mute groups main page again by pressing that mute groups button that's over here, the physical button, and I hit the mute for my male Vox solo, and then I hit home to get back out to my faders. Now you can see all of my channels are muted except for the male vocal channel. Pretty cool. You'll also notice real quick that the mutes are highlighted in orange as opposed to red. If you mute a channel from the channel, that mute will turn red. That's letting you know the channel is muted directly. If they illuminate orange, that means they are being muted by a group. So in my case, a mute groups could be a DCA or a subgroup that is muting any of those channels. So that just lets you know the channel's muted, but it's not being muted directly. There's another source that is muting this channel. Let's listen to this now. So I've got my male vocal channel isolated. I'll play my tracks back from my DAW. If you are using your own tracks, you're going to want to go into this screen and make sure you hit play there. Make sure you got some level. There we go. And there is our lead vocalist. Hopefully you guys can hear him. So if I go into this channel, we can take a look at the EQ curve. It's giving us a nice curve here. And you know, basically what the EQ does is it sort of shapes the sound. You know, you don't really want to hear the entire open microphone. There's a lot of stuff that it's going to pick up that you don't want. So if you'll see here, it's kind of taken out a significant amount of the low end, and it's left this area here, which is kind of where a lot of the presence of the vocals are resting. It takes out a little bit up here. There's some stuff in here that was unpleasant, and then it's kind of rolls it back up in the higher end so we can kind of maintain kind of the presence and the clarity and the intelligibility of the vocal there. And now if we listen to this without these processing, if I turn my EQ off and my compressor off, so this preset did include a compressor setting with the EQ. So that's dry. Turn that up a little bit. So a couple of things that we can hear are bleed over, you know, from the other performers that are on stage with him. You can hear the horns back there, you can hear the drums, you can hear a little bit of the guitar and the percussion and stuff like that. So that's kind of washing into his mic. And other than that, you know, a lot of the pleasing elements or the presence of his voice aren't really being accentuated. It's just kind of flat. So if we engage the EQ, so now we can hear. So that cleaned up some of that background wash and some of that bleed over, not all of it. You don't necessarily, on a vocal channel, you wouldn't necessarily want all of it to go away. That can sound unnatural in a live environment anyway. But it's also kind of just shaped it a little bit, and it's kind of highlighting the presence and the more pleasing elements of his voice and just giving us that and taking away things that we don't need or might be unpleasant. Additionally, if we add the compressor now that really just kind of gives it a little bit more energy, kind of pushes some energy into this channel. And what a compressor does, I'll stop this at this point just very quickly. A compressor is a way to sort of control the dynamics of a channel. You know, it compresses the dynamic range of your signal there, so you have a little bit better control with your fader. It's particularly handy on a voice, which has a very large dynamic range. It has the ability to be very, very, very soft, and it can get very, very loud, and it can do this very quickly. Within an instant, it can change between those two dynamics. So applying some compression to the channel can kind of help you as the engineer maintain a healthy level in your mix. So it's a really good idea to use one of those. And this, you know, gives you that setting. You don't have to worry about figuring out kind of how to dial this in. It gives you a really good starting point, if nothing else. Same thing with your EQ curve here. And you could easily take this and maybe fine tune it and tweak it from there. But it is an excellent starting point, and even if you use it as it was, it would sound good, and it would sound good within a mix. And I'll demonstrate a little bit of that here. I'm going to very quickly go ahead and configure my drum set, and we'll listen to that really briefly here. I'm just going to go ahead and dial in some drum settings. So I'm going to select drums in my instruments, and then in my type, I have all my different drum types. I've got an electronic kit option. I've got, hat, kick, snare, all of my different drums. I'm going to go ahead and pick one of these kick options. There are two kick drum options. There's a no sub and with a sub. That's asking you if your PA system is using a subwoofer or not. I do not have a subwoofer in my kitchen, so I'm going to pick no sub, and then I'm actually going to go ahead and just select the first one there, preset 1. Kick without a sub, and it's got a gate. So what that's going to do, it's going to apply a gate to this channel, and a gate is something that is very commonly used on drums, and I'll explain why. So I'll just recall that channel. There we go. I know that it is done. I still got my omit options picked there, so it didn't affect my name or my fader level. Let's go ahead. I'm going to go back to my mute groups and solo out my kick drum. So I'll unmute the male vocal solo and get my kick. I'll press home. Now I've just got my kick drum that we're listening to. If I restart my playback, you can hear the kick. And I'm actually going to pull this out. So this, give you some nice level on that. So that's our dry kick channel. So similar to the vocal channel, we can kind of hear some of the other elements of the stage kind of washing into that channel, and it's not very exciting. It's not a very exciting kick drum. But if we go ahead and engage the EQ, there you go. That sounds a lot more like a kick drum, or what we're used to listening to as a kick drum. And if we look at the EQ curve here, we kind of get an understanding of what it's doing. Obviously it's a kick drum, so we want to hear the low end of it. So it's kind of left a lot of the presence in the low end. It's got a really big scoop here in the mids and the low mids. And then it does have a little bit of boost right there in some of the highs, and that is to accentuate the actual beat, or the actual attack of the drum. You do want to still have that. If you were to just have all low end, it would just sound really muddy and not very clean. So by kind of accentuating some of that high end back into it, and kind of it gives you that beater attack, and so it adds clarity to the drum, but it's still got that nice full body. It's still got that kick drum weight to it, because we've got some nice low end still allowed into the channel. Now, if I turn my gate on, do you hear how that instantly cleaned up that channel? So now what's really happening is every time that drum hits, that's what we're hearing on the channel. When the drum is not actively hitting, the gate is closing the channel. So it's taking out all the background noise that's happening on stage, and it's only allowing the sound of the drum itself every time the drummer hits it to pass over the channel. And this tool really helps to cut down on feedback, and it really helps to clean your mix up and make the whole thing a lot more intelligible and things like that. Let's go ahead and get through the rest of our drum mix here. We're right at about time, and I've got a couple more tricks up my sleeve here. Continuing on, I'm just gonna go ahead and grab, all of my, just the first preset for all of my different options here. I know this is a 10-inch tom. Okay, I'll pick the second option here because I know I want a gate on that. Oops, did I get into my hat channel too quickly? Or did I accidentally recall a hat? Where am I? Oh, I skipped my hat. Never skip your hi-hat, guys. Hi-hats are important. I got my hi-hat there. Now I got my tom. So now here's my 10-inch tom. And I want a gate. And now I've got my second tom. Here we go. And this is a 16. So we've got, all of our various options for our different size toms, different drums, everything we need for our entire drum set. I've got a couple of overhead microphones. Okay, so just like that, I set up all of the drum channels. All I did was recall presets. That's not all I did. So I'm gonna, if I unengage, I'm stop playback. Now I'll just solo out the entire drum mix, and if we listen to that, the kick drum's gonna be too high. Yeah. So we have a decent drum mix. And I didn't do anything, here we go, I'll pan those a little bit, other than recall presets. But this is a pretty clean sounding drum set. It's intelligible, it sounds like a drum set, it's nice and thick, it's got a nice punch to it, it's got body where you need it, and clarity where you need it. And I did nothing but recall presets. So these things are extremely powerful. And now to demonstrate what a full mix could sound like from here, obviously you would continue to go through your channels and you would dial in presets, or you would at least dial in channel settings for all of these to build your mix. That is, the main meat of what mixing is. And it's not just mixing levels. You're going in and you're actually fine tuning, you're shaping the sound of each element and allowing them all to fit together, and to kind of have their own sonic space to live within, so they're not bleeding into each other or stepping on each other's toes, and everything is clean, everything is intelligible. You can hear all of your components of your mix easily. It's not muddy and it's not feeding back and things like that. So the presets are extremely powerful in building a mix very quickly, and they're designed to work together. So if you just use presets on all of your channels to dial in the entire mix, it would work very well and it would sound great. And I will show you that now. So let's say I had gone through, I've dialed in all my channels, I got all my presets dialed in. I could have even maybe spent a little more time than what I just did and browsed the presets a little more and been a little more selective with the presets I chose for each channel, because there are, real quick, I'll show you, there are presets that kind of run through different applications. If I look at my frets here, if I look at the electric guitar options, I actually have presets that are designed for different styles of music. I've got some blues, I've got a generic clean sound, I've got metal, I've got a couple of rock options, and then just a kind of a generic electric guitar starting point. And if you look at the names here, there you see that DYN, that dyne indication, that it's indicative of a dynamic microphone being placed on that, and so that it gives you an idea of kind of what the preset is expecting and how it's going to configure the channel accordingly. If the name of the preset itself is not enough information for you, you can always hit this button up here that says preset info right above it there. So with my preset selected, I press info and it gives me another sentence or two kind of explaining what the preset's going to do to the channel. So I could go through and I can really kind of choose my presets according to what I'm doing. And then after that, I'd probably want to apply some effects and things like that, and kind of really sweeten the mix like that. I'm not going to talk really at all about the effects. We have, I think, the next webinar on Friday that we're going to dive into the effects completely, and we're going to talk a lot about those. So hope you come back for that one. But just to illustrate what a full mix might sound like, I have done just that. I've dialed in all my presets and I applied some effects to a few channels. I'll wait for this to load. There we go. So we're loaded. I got to go in here and make sure that I'm on my right mode. So we hear what we're doing. Okay. All right. And here is the complete mix. Yeah. Let's listen to that for a little bit. Get a little. All right. We'll let that run in the background and take us out here. But so there you go. So that is the power of the presets. And now this mix was done, just using the presets. They were done a little more selectively, and we've gone in and added some effects and things like that too to sweeten it up. So, but this is what a complete mix could sound like just using presets. It sounds very good. It sounds entirely usable. It's very stable. It's not going to feedback. And then with all of our gain dialed in correctly, we know that we have the optimum performance of our equipment, and our mix is just going to run really smoothly. And that is about it for the content that I've prepared. So that took us through kind of the majority of building a mix from start to up into kind of adding your effects there. But yeah, that's the main meat of building your mix. Are there any questions out there? It's been kind of quiet this session. which is okay. And I know I probably am going a little fast. It is kind of a lot to get through.
Oh, Jason, we
in
are
an hour.
answering questions fast and furiously.
Oh, good. Okay, cool.
But we did have someone who wanted some guidance on digital gains. So I was wondering if you could quick give your spiel on digital gains.
Yes, very good. I'm so glad you brought that up because I completely forgot to even talk about that. Okay, real quick, digital gain. The digital gain is an additional gain stage after the preamp. So you have your initial preamp level, and your preamp is analog, okay? So the trim knob gets that analog preamp level dialed in, and it is not scene recallable. So that's one thing that kind of which gets us into the conversation of digital gain. So you get to your digital gain on your overview screen. So you get into your channel. On your overview screen, your digital gain here is that control right in the middle, or on your setup screen. And so that is that guy right there. It's the same control, it's just in two different places, depending on how you want to get to it. And what it is an additional plus or minus 15 dB of gain after the analog preamp. And so you can use this a couple of different ways. If you have, like my 58 here, if you have a channel that kind of comes into the mixer and it has a particularly weak signal, and you've got the analog trim knob all the way up and you have nowhere else to go with it, and you still need more signal out of that channel, you can come to your digital gain and you've got an additional 15 dB that you can use to get that channel up to its appropriate level. The other method that you can use this for is you can use the digital and the analog gain you can leverage the two together. And the reason you might want to do that is if you want to have scene recallable gain settings, or if you're mixing from an iPad or a tablet remotely and you're not physically next to the mixer and you need access to your gain settings. The way you would do that is, wrong way. I'll get back out to my trims here. So what you do in this instance, and I apologize, it's a gloomy day, my kitchen's a little bit dark, but you're going to set all of these to a nominal level. Let's say noon is fine, noon, maybe 1 o'clock, somewhere around there, between noon and 2, I would say. And you set every single one of them exactly the same. That way you don't have to worry about where those are set. The one thing you want to make sure that you're avoiding is clipping. You don't want to be clipping your inputs, remember. So as long as you've got this at your chosen position nominally, if it's noon or 1 or whatever it may be, as long as at that level you're not clipping your input, you're fine. Otherwise, set them all the same, and then make up what you need to for every channel with your digital gain. Okay, so if at noon you have a channel that is too hot, there's too much signal with that analog fader trim set at noon, you can bring it down. You have 15 dB that you can adjust it, you can attenuate to get that. Now, it won't fix clipping. Okay, so just make sure you're not clipping your channels, but you can, from that point, if at noon you're not clipping but you're still too hot, you can take up to 15 dB out of that channel. The inverse of that is if at noon, if you don't have enough signal, if it's not hot enough, you got 15 dB that you can make up and get it to where it needs to go. And then this control is scene recallable. You can save a scene or even a preset. Scene. You come in here and you can save a scene. To save a scene, you just hit the Save As button. You give it a name. I'll just demonstrate. Why not? Jason's rad scene. Name it, and then you can choose to save it either directly on the mixer, or if you have a connected USB storage device, you can save it there. At any time, you can swap them back and forth, so you can archive scenes onto USB drives and things like that, or transfer them to other mixers. But there you go. So I've just saved my scene, and it saved that one digital gain setting in that scene. It saves all the settings in there. So that is how you can achieve scene recallable gain. Additionally, if you're doing the remote option, if you're mixing from an iPad or from a tablet, you have this control on the tablet itself. So with all of your physical trim knobs set to nominal, you don't need to worry about those. Those are just set, we have signal in and we've adjusted accordingly with the digital gain. And then from that point on your tablet, if you need to make further adjustments during your performance, you've got that control right there on your iPad. So that is the digital gain. Thank you very much for bringing that up. The other thing I know I forgot to mention was I just showed you how to save a scene. You also have the ability to save custom presets. So if you do come up with some channel settings that you like, this is particularly advantageous because our presets don't include effects. They give you EQ, sometimes they give you compression, sometimes they give you gate. They won't ever give you effects because the effects are subjective, and there are a lot more variables that go into applying effects. So the effects are kind of on you, but if you do dial in some sweet effects and you like the way that sounds, you can come in here and you can change this here from factory to user, and this gives you the ability to save your custom presets. And it's the same thing. So on the user setting here, I hit save as, I give it a name. I can say Jason's kick, and I hit save. Again, you can save them internally to the mixer or to a connected USB device. And that way, again, now you have any of your own presets that you can dial up on any channel at any given time, which just can even further enhance your workflow and your productivity there, which is being able to dial up channel settings instantly. So that is a great thing to know. Thank you for that question. Any other questions out there? I know we're about 10 over time. I apologize, and thank you guys for hanging out with us. We're still trying to figure out how to get all this information out in a timely manner. It's a very deep mixer. But anything else out there? Are we still there? Am I still on? Looks like Golden's frozen.
Oh, I'm there. I'm
there
here.
There we go. Okay.
I just had my audio and video off.
Cool.
Yeah, we're just answering away in the chats.
Perfect. Yep. I'm glad. Yep. Thank you guys. Thank you, Golden and Stu, for helping me out and answering those chat questions. Anybody want to jump on a mic real quick? Any other questions you'd like to ask out loud? Otherwise, we can kind of just hang out for a few minutes and let us wrap up your Q&A questions if necessary. Anything that I
we
went
had
through...
problems with audio movers today.
Uh-oh.
Like
really?
For me, it kept going in and out. Some people, they weren't getting it. When I tried to reopen it, it disconnected. So
interesting.
Was your playback fader up?
Yeah. I mean, it says I'm going.
I actually heard it in the very beginning, but then it all of a sudden started.
So it's going now. It should be.
I have audio.
Okay.
Okay.
Huh. I'll look into that. I mean, we have.
I'm taking another listen.
We've got the highest attendance on record for these webinars today, so I'm wondering if
maybe that's why
we might need to explore.
Yeah, it disconnected
right
when I opened it, so maybe we need to ask it to allow more people.
Yeah, I can look into that. My apologies if that didn't work out for any of you out there. We're kind of figuring this out as we go. We're trying to provide you a valuable service here and make it the best we can and make it easy for you guys to follow along and hear what we're doing. So we're still working out the bugs a little bit, but hopefully it's still valuable for you out there if you were following along. Anything else? Any other questions you'd like to direct to the stage?
Mostly, there weren't. Mostly about the audio movers.
Got it.
We do have a few hands raised.
Okay.
Do you want to?
Yeah, we can take a couple questions before we wrap
Sure.
up here if people are still hanging out and interested in having a conversation.
Let's see. We'll go John Gunther. If you have a question, I've unmuted you, so you can go ahead and ask away.
Hello, John.
There we go. First of all, I want to say thanks for doing this. It's been very helpful and beneficial.
Awesome.
And appreciate it. I'm actually going to be on your webinar this coming Friday
cool.
as well when you're doing for the effects.
Yeah.
And then a week from tonight when you're doing the recording. But
yes.
Just so you know, I was not able to hear your audio whatsoever.
Okay. My apologies for that.
FYI, that statement I wanted to say, and my question is there a copy of this video that we can obtain at all?
Good question. Yes. So when this is over, sometime tomorrow, you'll likely receive a follow-up email as a thank you, and it will include a link to the recording of this webinar, so you can revisit this at any time. I do realize that I go through this stuff relatively quickly, so yes, you will have the ability to kind of go back and rewatch it at your leisure and stop and rewind and fast forward different parts so that you can take further notes or just kind of watch it at your leisure. So that was a good question. You'll be provided by that tomorrow when that
All
gets
right.
uploaded.
I appreciate it. And then if that's it, then I guess I'll see you Friday.
Okay. Thanks, John. We'll see you Friday.
Appreciate it.
All right. Anybody else?
Sudarshan has a question. Go ahead. I've unmuted you.
Hello.
Yes, sir. Hello, sir.
Hello.
Yes, sir. Hello, sir.
What's your question?
Sir, how to address pink noise, white noise, and feedback noise from speaker and mic?
How do you address pink noise or
Pink
white noise?
noise. Yes. Yeah.
So there is a pink noise generator in the mixer. It is a pink noise, not white noise. But if you go to a menu, and I'll get a little closer here. And within your TalkBack feature, so if you click on TalkBack, you have a noise generator here. And all you have to do is enable it, and then you can select any output on your mixer. You can select your main outputs, which I won't do now because that's what you're hearing, or not hearing, I guess, I'm sorry. Or you can send this to any one of your outputs at any given time. You can run it through your effects channels if you want to. So this is your TalkBack channel as well as your noise generator found on here. And with it enabled, you would just give it some level and direct it to an output, and you can do quick line checks that way using pink noise or whatever you need the noise for. Additionally, the noise generator is also seen in a couple of other features. It's found in the anti-feedback wizard. It's also found in the room tuning wizard. So within the anti-feedback wizard, if you're ringing out a room, if you're using the wizard, the automated room feedback stabilizer, there is the noise, so you can give your outputs some noise for your system to listen to if you're in a particularly quiet environment. And additionally, if you're running the tuning wizard at all, once it actually gets to the section where it's making its calculations, it will automatically start to play pink noise out of your PA. So a few different ways to utilize your pink noise there. But yeah, that's a fine question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Keith Campbell, I've
Keith.
unmuted you. Go ahead.
What's up, Keith?
I'm doing all right. How you guys doing today?
Doing very well. Thanks, man.
This has got to be the best webinar so far during this whole crisis.
Oh, man. Thank you.
Two questions. First
Okay.
one is, there's a couple other webinars you got coming up, like Friday, so on and so forth. Will my link work for Friday, or because I tried to re-sign up and it kept telling me it's already closed?
Yeah. So we've so far we've been putting a cap on the attendance for these as we've been kind of figuring out how to do it, and we weren't really sure what the attendance and what the audience participation was going to be like. But at this point, we're going to make the decision to just remove the cap, and we'll do that tomorrow. So after tomorrow, the remaining webinars that are on the calendar will be reopened for registration, so you'll be able to go and sign up for those without a problem. And then we do have some more that we're going to be putting on the calendar for June, and again, those will just be unlimited. So come one, come all, come everybody. We're very happy to have you all.
Awesome.
Is somebody-
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
The other question I have is, I know there's a ton of presets in here. The
Yes.
one preset that, because I'm in the DJ industry, and on occasion a whole bunch of live musicians want to show up.
Yeah.
Will there ever be a preset for like the whole EDM DJ? Trying to control those dudes is a whole pain in the ass.
So you mean like the DJ comes in and plugs his rig in on the fly?
Correct.
It's not so, but we can definitely, I can put it in the hat as an exploration into an option as a channel preset. But what you'd likely want to do, I mean, if he's plugged into the TouchMix and he has access to the TouchMix.
No,
he doesn't.
No, just me.
Just you. Well, that's
They
good.
have their own rig and they're sending a slamming signal to the house.
So is that signal clipping your preamps? Is that
I sit there and I play all night, just turning down to a point where it's like, dude, it just sounds like garbage. You need to realize you need to, stop seeing red.
Yeah.
I mean,
they're blowing up the preamp at that point.
Unfortunately, if you're blowing up the preamp, There's nothing that the
Nothing you
mixer
can
can do
do.
about that. You
Okay.
gotta put a pad somewhere. What you can do is you can invest in oh gosh, what's the word? There's you can buy electronic devices that will attenuate incoming signal. You put
Yeah,
it,
external pads that you can put before the
yeah,
preamp.
like a
Like
line
an
pad.
external limiter or something
Yeah,
like
exactly.
Yes.
And it'll attenuate the incoming signal by like
that.
24
Yeah, that just
or
means more
30
money I got to
dB.
spend.
Yeah, but in those instances, you can apply that. Otherwise,
I
the
feel
other
your
side
pain.
of it,
All
the other
right, well,
side
that's
of
my.
it on the
Like I said,
outputs.
those are my questions. You guys have been awesome. I can't wait for Friday for the next stage.
Very cool. Well, thanks, Keith. We appreciate
You're
you.
welcome.
Jason, one thing I wanted to mention, because somebody said they couldn't find the digital gain on the 16.
Oh,
And you have to be actually clicked on an input channel to see that.
yes.
They might have been in the setup of an output channel.
Yeah.
But go back to your channel, is click inside an input channel, then
Yep.
click setup, and you'll see the digital gain.
I'll show you. It's, so from this screen, so an input channel fader, not an output here. The input, so any input, go to setup, and there it is, or on the overview right here. It's the same, this looks the same on the 8 and 16. It's all the controls are in the same place. Very good. Okay, well, I appreciate the Q&A activity. Appreciate the questions. Thanks for talking to me out there. I'll give one more opportunity if anyone else wants to jump on real quick and ask anything last minute.
Okay,
yeah,
several
man,
people were asking about connecting to Dante and stage boxes. So give a quick explanation on that.
So the TouchMix series as it is does not have Dante capabilities. It is sort of like a standalone mixer series. So there is a way to utilize the Wi-Fi function, however, to turn the mixer itself into a stage box. You leave the mixer somewhere close to the stage or somewhere where that makes sense to make all your connections into the mixer, and then you connect an iPad. You can control 100% of the mixer remotely on an iPad. Like I said, the only thing you can't control are the analog preamps. Everything else, you have it on an iPad. You can get wherever you need to go. You've got full control of it. So that would be sort of a solution for a digital stage box. Additionally, on the TouchMix 30, you have the ability to actually connect a couple of different models of external fader packs. There's the one that we recommend is the Icon. I forgot the model off the top of my head, but there's a manufacturer called Icon. They make DAW controllers. It's a physical DAW controller, but we figured out how to map it to TouchMix. So you can set that up with a dongle, actually, a USB-C to USB-B or A dongle, and you can connect the physical fader pack to your iPad, and then you have a physical mixing station that can be remote. So your mixer can still live on stage as a stage box, and then you've got your tactile fader mix position wherever you need to go. So there's a couple of different options that you can use to get the same effect as a digital stage box.
So also PreSonus is one of them. I have somebody asking if the X Touch is one of them, and I don't remember seeing.
I don't know if it's the X. I know there is a Behringer model that does work. I'd have to go back and look.
But I know PreSonus and Icon were.
PreSonus and Icon all work very well.
Were mapped out for TouchMix.
Yeah. Very good. Good questions.
We still got people who are raising their hand if you have time.
Okay. Yeah, we got.
Where do you guys see the raising hand thing?
It's on the side.
Okay.
Andy, go ahead. I've unmuted you.
Hello, Andy. You there, Andy?
His mic is muted.
There we go. I'm unmuted now. Hey there.
How's it going?
Very well. Very well. Thank you.
Fantastic.
I was hoping to listen to everything and upload the files that I had downloaded. It didn't work out for me too well, but I'll figure it out some other time.
Okay.
I'm grateful for the opportunity to be on and get the great expertise from you. One of the things that I use the TouchMix 30 a lot for small live venue and live recordings.
Yeah.
every once in a while I forget to press record. I know there's a hard drive built into this thing somewhere.
So
but how do you access what's on the built-in hard drive?
So the memory, there isn't really a hard drive. There is a small memory chip, and it is very small. The only thing that you can store internally on the mixer are scenes and presets. It does not have storage for recordings at all.
Gotcha.
So you do need to be connecting that external drive and doing that way. So
And it works great for that. It's fantastic how easy it is.
I agree.
One other question I had is I asked about if we register for the next session.
Yep.
And I'm not able to attend the session, will I still get the video email?
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yep. It goes
Oh,
out
wait,
to
not the next session.
What?
The people who actually attended the session get the email. He's saying if you didn't attend the session.
No, we've been sending it to.
It goes out to anybody who registers.
The entire registration list, whether you come or not, you get the email.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah.
I didn't know that. Good to know.
Excellent.
Yep.
That is good to know. Thank you very much.
You got it.
Keep up the great work. Thanks, guys.
Will do. Thank you. All right, I got time for one more here. I think my wife is in the next room wanting to make dinner.
All right. Tim.
Hello, Tim.
Go ahead.
Hi.
Hey.
Hi. Thanks for taking my question.
Sure.
Webinar. Hope you guys are staying safe during this time.
Likewise.
I'm up in Canada, so we're doing our thing up here. Question I had was, I play in a rock band, and the thing I struggle with is where the output levels should be as opposed to the mixer levels. And my bandmates and I sometimes argue about what's better, because I like to do vocals first because that's what most people want to hear. And then when I go and start with his drums, and it's very minimal, so I'll start with his bass drum. Sometimes I can't get it loud enough on the channel. I have to go way above unity to have them coming through. So am I doing something wrong?
How are you setting the preamp before that? What's the level look like on your meter?
The preamp are all in the unity to yellowish.
Yeah.
And it just, I'm confused as to where the channel fader should be as opposed to the output. Should, you know, I know the output is your main out where, you know, the audience is going to hear it.
Yep.
But then struggle with bringing his bass
finding that balance. So what you might need to do in this instance is, you know, since it sounds like your kick drum has a particularly low level in relation to your vocalist, is that what I'm, or kind of the rest of your mix?
Yeah.
So in your channel mix, it might be a good idea to keep your kick fader a little bit higher, or whatever necessary, and maybe bring your levels down on the rest of your channels, and then scoot your main output up a little higher. That brings the rest of your entire mix up, which will get your kick drum level up to an audible level, and then you could kind of compensate for the rest of your channels by bringing those channel faders down a little ways.
Yes.
And you kind of leverage the output with those inputs in that regard.
Is there a main like a level on the output that I should be at?
No. As far as the only thing that you want to avoid on the output is clipping. You don't want the output channel to be here. Otherwise, as long as it's loud enough and it sounds good, you know, you can let this sit wherever it needs to be for your particular setting.
Yeah, usually I'm about 4 or 5, or in between -5 to maybe -1 on the output, because I'm using powered speakers and a powered sub.
Yeah.
So I just, you know, I know this is not exact science, and a lot of it is trial and error. So I just wondered. Yeah.
What powered speakers are you using?
They're Yorkville powered speakers.
Okay.
And a Yorkville sub. Yeah.
Yeah. The other part of it would be kind of figuring out, you know, the optimal position to have their gains on the speakers as well. And it's kind of the same principle that I talked about, just kind of finding the position where your mixer output is clipping those components, and then you take it back a little bit.
Okay. Thank you very much. Great session. Looking forward to the next one.
Awesome. Yeah. Happy to have you.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and close this out now. Thank you all very much for coming. We're really excited to be doing these for you guys, and we're happy that you all are able to come and join us. If you did have a question, if you put it in the Q&A and we didn't quite get to you, don't worry. We will be following up with all of those through email. We do have, we get a report of that when this is all over. So we will get to you through email, if nothing else. And again, I just want to say thank you, and hopefully I see a lot of you guys on Friday.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Take care.